Was there a traitor in the Trump administration? In a recent piece for Blaze News, Peter Navarro, who's the former director of the White House National Trade Council, argued that John Kelly, who's Trump's former chief of staff, was, quote, a bullying coward. So here to discuss with me is Blaze editor-in-chief Matthew Peterson and Peter Navarro himself. So Peter, let's get right into it. So why was Kelly a traitor within the Trump administration?
He was a coward, bully, and a traitor. He was a four-star general who refused to obey repeatedly the commander-in-chief of this country that was duly elected by the American people. It seems to me in the military, the first rule is obey the chain of command. Now, nobody knows Kelly better than I. I served with him for over 500 days, and it was painful, because he was a bully, but he also would interfere with key aspects of the Trump agenda. And I'll be very specific about this. A lot of the things that Trump wanted to do on the trade agenda involve things like setting tariffs on steel and aluminum or on China. We did buy American, hire American orders. And I would see repeatedly in the Oval Office, we'd be in there with the trade team. Kelly would be in there. And at the end of the discussion, it would be, all right, Kelly, let's get this done, whatever it might have been. And it was supposed to be done the next day. And sometimes weeks would go by before the president would say, hey, where's my tariff, or where's this? And Kelly would, and he'd bury stuff. And he'd do it because he was under the mistaken belief that he was the elected president, not President Trump. And it boggles the mind that a four-star general who knows the importance of the chain of command would do that. And that's, to me, if he were in the military and did that, he would be court-martialed. And the act is of treason when you betray your commander-in-chief. That's the case against John Kelly. And look, he never should have been put in as chief of staff. In the military, I love folks in the military. They're willing to lay their life down. But he was a fish out of water in the White House. He walks in with these high IQ Wall Street guys and other people who are the sharpest people in the shed. And he was always the dumbest guy in the room. And he was terrible with the media. There was just nothing about him that had any appeal. He did tremendous damage. And the last thing he's done now, add bully, coward, traitor, election interferer. He's got no business talking that kind of smack and trash 2 weeks out before an election to a left-wing publication like The Atlantic.
Peter, I cannot tell you how much I appreciated reading this article. Your candor and honesty are very much appreciated here, and I think our readers, our entire audience appreciates what you said as well. Unlike you, I only saw him once in the White House, wander into a room towards the end and seemed like a very angry and confused person. But can you tell us a little bit about Kelly and what he represents? Because, he's basically said this publicly. I mean, he thought he was saving the White House and the country from Trump. And everyone needs to understand that there were people like him, right? I mean, the reasoning that he had was, oh, well, I'm saving the country from the president while working for him. Yeah.
And I really appreciate the Blaze for publishing my article. He did a beautiful job production-wise. Kelly was of a type in the White House. There were the three generals, McMaster, there was Mattis over at the Pentagon, there was Kelly. They had this globalist view, for example, with respect to the trade agenda, that you couldn't, for example, go after South Korea to redo their trade deal, even though it was killing our auto industry, because they didn't want to disturb the military alliance. Now, what they didn't understand was a couple of things. One is that if we allow South Korea or Japan to destroy our automobile industry, when push comes to shove, we're not going to have the defense industrial base in order to defend ourselves and them. That's number one. And number two, they didn't understand the beauty of Trump. It's like we're playing with the strong bargaining hand. We could go to South Korea, and we did this successfully, and say, hey, that's a bad deal for us. We're renegotiating. He could hold their feet to the fire without endangering the alliances. And the idea that those three generals, or Gary Cohn at the National Economic Council, guy, Wall Street Goldman Sachs guy, or Rex Tillerson, the Exxon guy at the Department of State, somehow thought that they knew better than Trump when Trump had been successfully elected on a MAGA platform on bringing our manufacturing back home, was just wrong. I mean, the original sin of all of this was to appoint any of those clowns to begin with. I'm sure that President Trump will get it right the second term, but I'm telling you, it was tough. Nobody would have bet on this. I was one of only three people that survived the all 4 years plus the campaign with Donald Trump. And I got more done in 4 years than Kamala Harris did. I'll put my record on that. But my point is simply that those first couple of years, man, that was hand-to-hand combat with people like Kelly. I mean, he tried to fire. I was there with him 510 days. He probably tried to fire me 509 of them because I never took any of his crap. The other thing, I didn't even get a chance to talk about this much, but he's like Captain Queeg, if you know that. He would like eavesdrop on the president's conversations at night. The president loves to get on the phone at night. That's kind of his thing. Like, he talks to whoever he needs to talk. That's how he formulates ideas and comes to the great conclusions he so often does. And Kelly was afraid that Trump would be talking to people and, oh my gosh, he shouldn't be talking, whatever. So he'd do that, and then he'd read the phone logs to see if people like me had made any calls to the president. And he'd try to enforce this rule on Trump where he tried to exclude people from him instead of, as Corey Lewandowski once said, letting Trump be Trump. And it was just doomed to failure. There's a poignant moment in my In Trump Time book where I write about the final days of Kelly. We're sitting in Buenos Aires, Argentina at the G20, and we're sitting at a dinner table across from the Chinese delegation. Trump's in the center, head-to-head with Xi Jinping, right? And Kelly's a broken man by that point, and he's like days away from leaving, and he turns to me and apologizes for what he did to me, and he said that he got it wrong, that he didn't realize I was one of the good guys, and the Gary Cohns of this world who had basically wrapped them around their fingers were the ones who were really the toxic ones. And if he had understood that from the beginning and cast his lot in with the Trump people instead of the interlopers like Gary Cohn and Madison Tillerson and those people, he would have done possibly a good job. If he had stayed at Homeland Security, he probably would have been a success. He just had no business at the White House, and he did tremendous damage. And now he's trying to stop Donald Trump from getting a second term, and that should piss everybody off.
Peter, before we get to this election this time around, the 2020 election, we all know revolved around Hunter Biden and his laptop. And earlier today, a great reporter, Catherine Herridge, came out on X and said, of course, the feds knew what was happening. The IRS, the DOJ, and the FBI all knew that Hunter Biden's laptop was real immediately. And they said that prosecutors demanded that they not ask questions about Joe Biden ahead of the 2020 election. Yeah. So what's your take? Does any of this surprise you at all?
No, look, the FBI put me in leg irons, took me down at an airport for a misdemeanor where the protocol is, hey, Navarro, we got a warrant for you. Would you mind reporting down to the court? Okay. No, they are the Federal Bureau of Intimidation. They went after Trump with automatic rifles, me with handguns. It's like, that is a broken agency. That is an agency that needs to be dismantled and built from the ground back up. Look, we know that if the people of America had known what was in that laptop, they would have voted more for Donald Trump, and that alone would have been enough to sway the election. So what the FBI engaged in was election interference. And what amazes me, like the left, they call us, for example, fascists and authoritarians. Like, I went to prison, Bannon went to prison, Rudy Giuliani's bankrupt because of them. John Clark and John Eastman lost their bar cards because of them. They want to put Donald Trump in prison for 700 years. And don't forget, if Kamala wins, they'll do that. And it's just like, and then they say we interfere with elections, and they do this kind of stuff. I mean, that's egregious. I think what we don't need retribution. What we need is accountability. And the people who were involved at the FBI and the Russia hoax and in the Hunter Biden laptop suppression, and some of these legislators like Schiff and Swalwell, who repeatedly lied to the American public, and then the 20 or so intelligence, let's put that in air quotes, intelligence officers who said that the laptop was a Russia hoax too. Now, come on. So good for Catherine Herridge, good reporting. But what we need to do now in the last 7 days here, 7 days, just get our people to the polls. Here's what I'm hearing out there. I just got back from a trip to North Carolina and Georgia. I was on a bus tour with some folks, and then I did 4 rallies with the presidents, had the opportunity to speak and listen. Here's what I heard. America's in trouble, deep trouble. Kamala Harris is responsible for most of that trouble. Donald Trump will get us out of that trouble. And that's the closing argument here. That's why I think that if we get our people to the polls, Donald Trump will be the 47th president. And time's on our side. I mean, I kind of wish there was another month to Election Day, because the more people learn about Harris, the less they like her. She's very unlikable.
That's true.
I mean,
yeah.
Let me put a plug in for Newsmax's Blind Ambition documentary. It's one of the, I wish everybody in this country would watch that, because it goes back to the roots of Kamala Harris and all the Marxist roots with her father and all her woke ideology pronunciations back when she was working her way up the ladder.
Yep.
And she's just she's not America. She's not America. She's California, San Francisco.
Yeah.
And that is no longer America.